So now that I have my slab rolled out, I'm ready to begin to make my project. So the next step is to take a stencil from your bucket and set it on top of your slab of clay. We are using the fettling knife to cut with. Remember, it's not even as sharp as a kitchen knife, so you don't have to be afraid to handle this tool. But what you do is you stand the fettling knife up tall till the tip of the knife touches the table, and then you slide it along the stencil. I don't want to tip my knife at an angle because then I'm going to cut under my stencil. So this stencil is the same size as a rectangle that was printed on your rough draft worksheet. So you've got some options. You can sculpt this door just by looking at your drawing. So your next step would be to draw the shape of the door on top of this. And what we're using to draw with is an ink pen. You're not going to see the ink on the clay. It's just going to become a carving tool. So I could draw out the shape of my door, and I want it to be large, and I want it to really touch the edges of my stencil. If I don't like the way that I drew the shape, I just take my finger and I smear it, and I can redraw the shape of the door. But another thing that you could do, and this is only for students who drew the full size of their rectangle, you can get a print of your clay. So what we do is you can take a Crayola marker and you can draw the outside edge of your door. So I'm going to draw right over the top of my paintbrushes to get the whole shape of my door. Crayola marker is not permanent. We only put marker on paper. We never put marker on clay. But now what I can do is take my clay slab and lay it right on top of that rectangle. Give it a little pat to make it stick. I'm going to sandwich my paper and flip it over. Give it a little paper massage to get that marker to print. And now I have a green line that just printed for me to follow. So I'm going to repeat the same steps where I'm going to use my ink pen to carve it so I can see that line easier. And now, if I like the shape of it, I'm ready to cut it out. So I stand my fettling knife up tall. I'm cutting from the end of the knife, and I'm going to try and follow that carved line. And notice my other hand not holding the knife is steering my clay or turning my clay. And if I make a mistake and I don't like this, I can just squish my clay up, roll it out flat into a slab, and then try it again. Okay, so this is the shape of my door. Now I can use my fingers and kind of smooth out the edges. I'm going to keep this extra clay on my table. And this is the way I cut it, but if you notice, it doesn't match my drawing because my drawing was turned over. So when I flip this over, now it does match my drawing. So this is actually going to be the front of my clay piece. So I'm going to smooth things out. The best tool to smooth with is just your dry finger. No water on the clay. Water makes glue. Okay, now what I'm going to do is look at my textures that I was going to carve into the surface of the door. And I want my textures to kind of make this look like the palette is made of wood. So I can use any tools from my yogurt cup. You've got wooden tools, you've got the ink pen, and I'm going to carve in some lines. Again, if I don't like the look of the lines, I can just smooth it out and try it again. Okay, so for me, that might be all the more texture that I start out with for my palette. That's going to become my door. So from here, now I have to build all my 3D items. Everything I make that's 3D has to be attached to my clay door. So I might move on to making my frame next. So there are 3 ways that I can work with clay: pinch, coil, and slab. So if I want to work with slabs of clay, I just get my guide sticks, a rolling pin, I roll out the clay flat, and I cut it into shapes that I want. But if I'm going to coil, I'm going to take a small piece of clay in my hands and I'm going to roll it and then maybe move to the desktop or the tabletop to roll out that coil evenly. And for my frame, I was going to have a coil that goes around the whole edge of my paint palette. So I'm going to decide kind of how thick I want that coil. I think I want like an in-between size. So I'm going to stretch this a little more. And I think I like the look of that size. Okay, so now I'm ready to start to attach my clay. When we took our notes, we learned that we have to do the 4 S's: score, slip, stick, smooth. So I'm going to be using a bowl of water and my toothbrush to attach clay. All right, so that might be what I'm trying to attach to start with. All right, so I have a bowl with a little bit of water in it and a toothbrush. I'm just going to dip that toothbrush in water. Anywhere 2 pieces of clay touch, I have to score and slip. So I need to brush the side of my door, and I'm going to brush one edge of that coil, and it should start to look like Velcro, or it should look like it's all scratchy. Now I'm going to stick. So that was score, slip, and now I stick. So I need to repeat that. I'm going to brush this piece, and I'm going to attach. Now, step 4 is to smooth. So I don't like that this looks like 2 separate pieces of coils. So I'm going to kind of blend those together with my finger. Sometimes I can use very soft clay and just pinch that clay really thin to patch over it to start to blend the clay. So that's kind of what that just became. So I'm going to look at my rough draft drawing, and I'm going to decide what my frame. My frame is next. I'm going to decide how I'm building that frame around my door. Okay, so now this is all step 4, which is to smooth. Score, slip, stick, smooth. Okay, so from here, when I look at my door, I had a window cut out, which is the whole of my paint palette. So I like to draw things with my ink pen first, and then switch to my knife so I know exactly where to cut. And then I always smooth out those edges after I'm done cutting. I use my dry finger, and I make the sides of those cuts nice and smooth and even. I get rid of the jaggedy spots. I'm going to turn my clay over, and I'm going to blend out that clay that looked rough on the back side. I'm going to check my attaching here. I need to press it a little firmer on the bottom side so I don't see air showing through.